Steve, Brandon, the Nintendo Switch successor is in the ether. Can you feel it, Brandon? Can you feel it flowing towards us? Any month now, this thing may be announced and even be in our hands. And we've been saying this for years at this point. It feels like since 2020 we've been saying the Switch 2 is on the way. But now it feels like it literally is on the way. Switch is kind of wrapping up its life. And everybody is making their predictions. Everyone on Twitter, everyone on YouTube. But the problem with those guys is they don't know a darn thing. Whereas we know all there is to know about everything in the world and we've never been wrong in our lives. So, Steve, tell me a little thing about the Switch 2 that I've never heard before.
Well, I mean, given that I know everything, the Switch 2 is going to have an upgraded Pro Controller with a mic, a speaker, and Hall Effect sticks. I'm calling that right now.
With the Switch, they had the Switch Online app announced pretty early in its life. And it feels like that thing just kind of went to the wayside after the first year. Games stopped supporting it. It was just de-emphasized entirely. So having a microphone in the controller, not just for gameplay purposes, but for actual communication, that kind of feels like a no-brainer at this point, right?
Yeah, I think so. I've been thinking about this a lot. I think we all agree that the Switch Online voice implementation, whatever you want to call it was bad. It was straight up bad. Nobody liked it. It shouldn't have existed. I remember when it first came out, people trying to create these weird accessories that had like dual audio jacks so that you could hook one up to your phone and then one all the way across the room to the Switch on the dock. Like it just wasn't good. And I think that that Nintendo has to realize just how badly they fumbled with voice chat on the Switch, and they have to have engineered some type of solution to make that easier. And I'm really just hoping they stole a page out of Sony's playbook with the PS5, because that's where I find myself playing everything now that involves playing with friends, just because it's effortless.
It's so funny too, like when you compare what Nintendo did with the Switch to the Wii U, because I can think of games on the Wii U that had voice chat just through the microphone on the dang gamepad.
I mean, the DS did as well at some times.
Yeah.
The Wii U had usernames rather than friend codes as well. Like you could call yourself Steve B, and that would be your Wii U name for every game. There's no need for friend codes or anything.
Yeah, the Switch is a weird step back in a few ways. I mean, it had a video voice chat like application where you could draw on the screen, you could talk to your friends. When you ended the call, you could wave goodbye.
Yeah.
It's just weird that all that was like stripped out of the Switch. Like, I understand not having video chat, but no voice chat of any kind. Like, yes, there's the Nintendo Switch Online app, but that's not voice chat. I'm not even going to consider that voice chat. You might as well be using Discord at that point.
Everyone does, right? I'm glad Steve opened up with like feature utility, because the Switch 2, it could just be a hardware jump over the Switch, but that's rarely what Nintendo does. Like when they did the Wii with motion controls, they also had all those channels and the Wii Shop channel. With Wii U, you had the second screen, but it also had gyro and an NFC reader. The Switch is a hybrid, but there's also like a camera that can talk to cardboard in there. So like when it comes to the Switch 2, it's not just going to be a power jump. There's going to be some sort of gimmick in there. And I've sort of been thinking about how you evolve the Switch concept. And the way that I'm thinking is the Joy-Con are kind of limited, right? Like, as a single-player experience, it makes the D-pad kind of iffy. As a multiplayer experience, you're stuck with games that only use one analog stick. And I'm trying to think about how you fix that. And I don't know if this is even plausible, but what came to my mind, it's like a Swiss Army knife Joy-Con, where you take it off, and all of a sudden you can sort of fold it out, and it's a controller, it's a full controller. You just fold out a second analog stick, and you have all the buttons there for every game to be switched wherever you are. Is that dumb?
I'm trying to imagine how this would even look. Like, is the joystick on the side of the controller? So, like, do I have to hold it like this?
No. So
what does it look
you
like?
got the Joy-Con, you just sort of... where the rail is, you can just sort of take it out. And, then you have, like, a control... like a regular
it folds
controller.
out this way.
Outward.
So,
yeah.
Okay. See, I was imagining it folded out on the side of the railing, so it was not on the face.
See,
okay, that
I
makes
can't
sense.
imagine that working, but what if it was like, you might remember that in the early days of the Switch, Nintendo experimented with magnetic Joy-Con rather than using the rail system.
Oh, sure.
So what if each Joy-Con had different polarity on each side, and then they could snap together to form one controller when you take them off? Like, just take both off, snap them together, and then you've got a fully functional controller.
That is
I
interesting.
actually love that.
I think the one limitation there is like when it comes to multiplayer, you're still stuck with one controller, aren't you? Rather than both people having like a full controller each.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I'm just trying to think about how you would make all that stuff fold out without making the Joy-Con ridiculously big, right? Because if it folded out, that Joy-Con would have to be like twice the thickness of a current Joy-Con. Which, I mean, could work. But Nintendo has also patented multiple times, I think, modular controllers, where you have like little add-ons that you stick on to add more functionality to a controller. They've patented that, I think, twice now. So it would be interesting to see if maybe they had like, oh, hey, you snap off your Joy-Con and then there's these little extra bits you could just add on that make it a full, like you can add a second analog, or you can add a ABXY buttons or whatever to one Joy-Con. But then again, then you're like carrying around like a satchel full of
that's the whole thing about the Switch,
Joy-Con
right?
bits.
It's like you don't carry anything around. It's like a Famicom. Just the controllers are on there, and that's all you kind of need. That's kind of the elegance of it.
Yeah, there's a way to do it for sure. You could even maybe you could do like a touch sensitive portion of the Joy-Con housing that acts as a second stick if you want. I don't know.
That'd be
Nintendo will come
yeah.
up with something that none of us expect for this.
It'll be the new 3DS nub, just on the corner of the controller. So there's your second stick.
This one just came to mind while we were talking just now, and it's ridiculous and kind of stupid, but I could see them doing it. So I was thinking about the Wii U and how the Wii U streamed video from the console to the gamepad. Well, what if the Switch 2 streamed video from the Switch back to the dock? So rather than your second screen being your handheld, your second screen is your television. There could be some weird, like, Nintendo-y applications for something like that. Like, what's the free downloadable trivia game that they're going to release that's going to use this functionality?
So you think they're going to go back to dual screens?
They're going to go back to dual screens, but it's going to be in the most cumbersome setup you've ever seen.
Well, I think that there's even more to that, really. Is like the dock on the Switch is just a HDMI port. That's all that thing really is. Like you get Ethernet, you get USB, but there's no strength to that hardware. And I think they probably could do something with the dock this time. And when they announced the Switch originally, they said that you could put USB hard drives to it, and they never actually allowed that to happen. But I've been thinking for a while, like, what if the dock had like a hard drive in? So like you could have your home setup with like hundreds of games installed, but then you can also, like when you're on the go, all the stuff that you want to take portably is on the SD card. I think that could be pretty rad.
Yeah. I mean that just works with the modular design of the Switch in general too. So yeah, that would be great. We've talked a lot about a dock potentially having more power behind it, like supplemental juice to make the Switch more powerful when docked. And I think storage is probably easier and also just the smarter route. Because I could definitely see a few games that I just wouldn't want to take on the go with me because I'd rather play on the TV. Maybe they're just big. That'd be a great solution to something like that.
So like Warzone on PS5 and Xbox, that's like 100 gigabytes, and it's an online-only game. It's not exactly something that you want to be taking up your portable space, because you're not going to be using that on the go, most likely, unless like you find a hotspot or something. So for me personally, I'd rather just have that as a home experience on the hard drive, and ignore it, and just have my portable play filled with other games. I think that would be a good application for that.
There's also the potential to let that dock storage be like SSD, just be faster.
Yeah.
Because, something that I've been spoiled on with the PS5 are just those incredible load times. And I have a hard time imagining having that kind of speed available on the Switch in portable mode. But having that available in docked mode would be a great compromise.
Yeah, I agree. I really like where you're headed with this idea too, Brandon, because Throwing it back again to Nintendo patents of yesteryear, when the Switch, or rather the NX, was being heavily rumored about, Nintendo did patent a kind of beefier dock, or at least what we all imagine was that, in the form of what they called a supplemental computing device.
Yeah.
And they described it as something you could hook a hybrid console up to that would then supply it with more processing horsepower. And to me, within the bounds of reality, this would be the thing I'd be most excited to see, because obviously we know now that when you put the Switch in the dock, not a whole lot is actually happening. The clock speeds for the system on a chip are being, shot up to account for the fact that you're being supplied with a steady stream of power and you're no longer on battery, but nothing else is really going on there.
Yeah.
Nintendo could add another system on a chip into the dock, and then basically do like an SLI style setup where you just double the rendering power of the console when it's docked, which would be really amazing. Like, if the rumored specs are true, then this thing is about as powerful as a base PS4, just in handheld mode, not accounting for DLSS or anything else. If you were to add like a second PS4 level GPU to this thing's ability to render, then I don't know how different games would be visually speaking, when accounting for DLSS and post-processing stuff. I don't know how different they'd be from PS5 and Series X titles at that point from just a casual, like, visual standpoint. I think we'd get close enough. Let's put it that way.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, right now we have Steam Deck, which is basically a more powerful PS4 but portable. And if you've got DLSS on this thing, you can essentially take a similar level spec device and kind of get like high resolutions out of it. So you potentially for some games you could reach 4K, which is unlikely for most of them. But if you also have the extra hardware of this dock, then maybe 4K is feasible. And it's also worth like considering most of the most popular games of this generation are cross-play PS4 games. Like Resident Evil 4 and Street Fighter 6 were also on the PlayStation 4. And if you port those games over to the Switch 2 and use DLSS and this extra hardware power, then you probably would get really comparable results to PlayStation 5. Not to say that the hardware itself would be parity to PS5, but the results, I think, potentially could be.
I think people are also underestimating what a what a base PS4 was capable of.
Yeah.
Like, you think about a lot of the games that are available on PlayStation 4, like The Last of Us Part 2, and the way that game looks. Having that available on a handheld, yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, and just like to acknowledge all the rumors as well, back at Gamescom, we did actually hear ourselves, and we said this back in our prior video, that we also heard that the Matrix demo was running on this Switch too. And then Nate the Hate went on to verify that there was a Breath of the Wild demo which was showing load times, or the lack of load times. Like, it would just go from title screen to gameplay like that. So our source on that Matrix stuff was pretty tight, so I personally have a lot of belief in that, but PS4 wouldn't be able to run the Matrix demo. Like, and if it did, it would be at a crawl, whereas this thing is said to be comparable to like Series S in just raw fidelity, but on a handheld. So if we have the extra dock power as well, then all of a sudden, I think this would be a very impressive device, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of potential for the Switch 2. I think people are undercutting just how incredible DLSS can be. Now, obviously, we don't know, we don't know for sure that it's going to support DLSS. We don't know for sure really anything. But I do think that people, if you've never played a PC game with DLSS, it's really hard to imagine the kind of performance uplift you get from that technology and how believable it is. Like, it doesn't really dramatically change the image quality of a game while still providing some pretty huge gains in performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, while this thing would likely not support the 3.0 update, which is frame generation, because that's usually on the more powerful graphics cards, it will take advantage of 3.5, which every NVIDIA card at the moment does. And 3.5 allows for cheaper ray tracing. And not just cheaper ray tracing, but more impressive ray tracing, because it has less of the D-filters on there. There's a bunch of comparisons which we'll put on the screen at the moment, but potentially That does mean if Switch 2 is using DLSS 3.5, it could deliver more impressive ray tracing results than PS5 and Series X, which wouldn't have those defilters because they'll be using just the raw ray tracing with no DLSS at all. And what's kind of wild is a Nintendo handheld with cheap DLSS on a hardware level with more impressive results could mean that Nintendo games could actually use ray tracing, which is kind of wild to think about on a tiny little handheld.
I have a sneaking suspicion that whatever like their tentpole first-party game is that they announce alongside the Switch 2 is going to look very impressive compared to what we have on Switch today, and that's largely in part because of ray tracing. Ray tracing is the separation between this is a video game and dang.
And like right now, like some games do have good ray tracing, but I think you can count the number of PS5 showcases of ray tracing on like one hand, maybe two hands. Spider-Man 2 is a great example, but I think ray tracing is just too expensive for most games to actually utilize it. And I've been thinking about like what Nintendo games could utilize it, and one big one that comes to mind, not big on a commercial standpoint, but big on a this makes sense standpoint, Wave Race. Bring back Wave Race with ray traced water.
Oh man,
that is impressive. I haven't thought about Wave Race in a long time.
No one has, but like this makes the most sense. Nintendo like to bring back their franchises when there is a hardware feature to make use of, whether it be a new control scheme. But they haven't really had a new visual showcase for a long time. But Wave Race with actual ray traced reflections would be phenomenal. And the last one was on GameCube, so imagine the jump going from GameCube to suddenly just like modern visuals. That would be a radical showcase of what Switch 2 is kind of capable of.
I can't even imagine what that would look like, because I don't think I've even seen ray traced water like reflections on a scale like that, because with a game like Wave Race, it's all water. So yeah, wow. I think that'd be really sick. I think there's also potential for a game like Splatoon.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
The ink should reflect light, so you should get some light bouncing from that, but you should also see some light reflections in some of that ink. You look like you're stewing there, John.
No, I think this is a really good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was also going to mention another game. One thing that we've been waiting this whole Switch lifecycle for are HD ports of Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. And I'm wondering now, like, is the reason that we haven't got Wind Waker this whole time, is it because they're waiting for a ray-traced Wind Waker?
That would be interesting to see ray tracing paired with cell shading. I don't think that's been done before, at least
Not
not
that I can
in
think of.
Yeah. I wonder how those would pair together. I just want to see Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on modern Nintendo hardware, which is wild to think we got them last gen, but it feels like such a long time ago already.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
first dungeon on Dragon Roost Island, it's full of so much magma and lava. They could light that entire dungeon just by the light illuminating from the lava itself, and I think that game would look very different, but in a good way.
Yeah.
The HD port or remaster of Wind Waker also could stand to have some adjustments made, because the bloom's a little too aggressive.
It is.
The way like light interacts with Link in some scenes, like when he opens a chest, just makes the cell shading fall apart. So this would be a good opportunity to rectify that while making a meaningful visual change to the game.
Yeah. Performance is also a bit rough on Wii U. Whenever there's an explosion, like the frame rate halves. But there's a lot to fix, I think. And like I'm thinking about when you're sailing and the time of day changes to nighttime. And all of a sudden, the light of the moon is bouncing off the water. I think that'll look gorgeous. But yeah, when we're thinking about like a flagship title, though, like we've mentioned some, higher up, like we've mentioned like Wave Race and Splatoon and a Wind Waker remaster, but they're not the stuff that sells a system. What is selling Switch 2? What is the premier title?
I go back and forth between two games on this, and one is the next 3D Mario adventure.
Yeah, lock it in. That's happening. Yeah.
I think it's been too long since Odyssey. Odyssey never got like any meaningful DLC upgrades outside of like the free Luigi Balloon World stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to see what's next for Mario. You know, Bowser's Fury looks like the blueprint for what's next, and I'm ready to see what that is. So on the other hand,
when you say blueprint for Bowser's Fury, are you suggesting like it's just one big world?
I think that's what I want. I want to see what Mario works. I want to see how Mario works in an environment like that on a larger scale than what we got with Bowser's Fury, because Bowser's Fury is separated by a lot of water. Like it's very much 3D world levels just kind of thrown onto a map. And while it works, I'd like to see a cohesive Mario world. Like I want to climb over a hillside and then see, you know, somewhere familiar, like Peach's castle peeking over the horizon, and then out in the distance, I can see Bowser's castle. I just want those landmarks to be there in a cohesive Mushroom Kingdom. Mario's never done that before, and that would be exciting. On the other hand, for games, I think it would again be a Mario game, but this time it'd be Mario Kart. I feel like Mario Kart 8 has been out for so long, you know, we just finished the DLC. I'm ready to know what's next, and with how well Mario Kart 8 sold, you'd be silly not to have the next game ready to drive sales for a new platform like that.
Yeah. If anyone doesn't think both of those games are launching in the first year, then you just like stand in the fool corner, because of course they are. They've probably been finished for like a year, just sitting on them.
Yeah. Nintendo has a habit of finishing games and then just waiting for the right moment to release them. I gotta say though, my pick was tonally very different. I imagine at this point that one of the marquee launch titles for the Switch 2 will be Metroid Prime 4. I think that, you know, that game has languished in development hell for a while, but I think at a certain point, Nintendo likely evaluated a build of the game and said, you know what, if we polish this up visually a bit more, this would be a good showcase of all the new tech that's in the Switch 2, especially if we're talking about ray tracing support. Because when you think about the environments in Metroid, nothing would lend itself better to ray tracing than that. Like where little light shafts come into, you know, otherwise really dimly lit areas. Stuff like that where you could really... I mean, one, it wouldn't be a super expensive ray tracing implementation because there's a lot of darkness inherent to some of the areas within Metroid. But two, even just looking at Metroid Prime Remastered on the current model of the Switch, that is dang impressive visually. And so it's clear that Retro has a really good handle on the hardware. And so I think that they've likely had more time with Switch 2 dev kits than most other partners. And I'm willing to bet at this point Nintendo, as they are wont to do, we saw this with Breath of the Wild, you know, when they see they have a promising game on their hands and they know there's new hardware on the horizon, they're like, we'll just put this one aside and save this because we know it's going to be a banger when we drop our new hardware. So I wouldn't be shocked at all to see Metroid Prime 4 probably even as a launch title for Switch 2 at this point.
I know there's going to be some comments saying that Metroid isn't big enough to be the tentpole game. I think it can be. I think it absolutely can be. Zelda wasn't actually, like, Zelda had some hitters, but Zelda as a franchise wasn't, like, Mario level until Breath of the Wild. Mm-hmm. I want to say, like, the best-selling Zelda game was Twilight Princess at, like, 7 million before that. So Zelda had big successes, but the majority of Zelda games were sort of middling around 3 to 5 million. And Metroid, at its best, hits around 3 million. But it's never really had that key opportunity to be huge. I want to say like Metroid Prime was probably that the first game was its best opportunity, and that was on the GameCube, which also didn't sell particularly well. But if you put Metroid Prime in a fantastic spot, suddenly I think people will give it a go. ARMS with the Switch launch sold around 3 million as well, which is a crazy success for a brand new fighting IP. Like, very few fighting games ever touch 3 million. So for something like ARMS to get recognition in that launch, I think that just kind of shows that Metroid could be far bigger than that.
I think Metroid Prime 4 also has a lot of potential just in a Western space, like from the Western perspective, because you give a big shooter, tentpole shooter like Metroid Prime 4 and make it look as pretty as possible and make that your premier title for a console, and I think you're going to draw a lot of attention just because of that. I mean, secondary to that, if we're talking the Switch 2, the Switch is already just a huge success, so there's going to be mindshare there. And hopefully that draws people to the game. It's also anticipated, so I think people who aren't even Metroid fans are going to be looking at the game once it eventually pops up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think that I don't think Metroid will be the one and only game. I think Nintendo would be wise to come out of the gate with more than one title at launch. And I could see a couple different scenarios. I do agree with Brandon that it's high time for another 3D Mario game, and I could see that happening too. And I think it's smart for Nintendo to have a game that is a bit more appropriate for all ages, and then something that skews a bit more serious for people who want, kind of a foil to the bright, colorful environments of something like Mario or even a 2D Zelda, right? Which I imagine, again, would be a more bright, colorful kind of affair, which is, I don't know that I would predict it, but it is on my wish list at least.
They usually do a big single-player game and a big multiplayer game. Like the Wii had Wii Sports and Twilight Princess. The Switch had Breath of the Wild and 1-2 Switch. So, I think it'd be something of that vein. And, Metroid Prime 4 and Mario Kart as launch titles would be pretty wild. When it comes to Mario Kart as well, I think we can make predictions about it, but that's a whole other video. Is it Nintendo Kart? Is it just going to do something wild? I don't know. But I think a 99 mode in Mario Kart could be really interesting. Just getting 99 players in one race, completely just pushing each other off Rainbow Road, or a 99 player battle mode. That would make battle mode interesting. Because battle mode is something we always ask for. They finally gave it to us in Mario Kart 8, and no one uses it. But suddenly you put 99 players in, and now it's exciting again. That'd be rad.
I think 99 players combined with something like Double Dash would be cool.
Oh, interesting.
You get 2 players on a cart, so you have one person driving and another person focusing on items and attacking. An idea I had for the next Mario Kart would be one person driving, another person on the back, like in Double Dash. But instead of facing forward, they're facing backwards. So, if you're playing online, that person's perspective is the rear. So they're literally aiming behind them, throwing exactly where they want to. And I think that would lend itself really well to something like a battle mode, especially like a battle royale with 99 players. Might get a little too hardcore as being able to aim gives you a lot of power, but yeah. I think it'd be interesting.
Yeah. I think battle mode just kind of needs a shake-up in general, because your average person, you can be good at battle mode, but your average person, you hand a controller, and they're just flailing shells everywhere. They can't really aim. I'd like to see just battle mode get a full revamp.
Yeah, Mario Kart Battle Mode has needed it for a long time. I was a huge fan of Battle Mode in 64, but I've not really liked any implementation of Battle Mode since. I love the idea of including massively multiplayer elements to modern games, because obviously the 99 games have been kind of a hit, but they're all based on very old titles. It would be nice to see Nintendo drop kind of this massive, Battle Royale stuff into one of their actual modern releases.
Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Where's my Splatoon Splattle Royale?
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been speaking multiplayer as well. I've been thinking about Monolith Soft, because I'm always thinking about Monolith Soft. And with Xenoblade X, do you remember that there was co-op in that game? So Xenoblade X was a full open world game, but there were these sub-areas where you could get together and do these small little missions together. It was disconnected from the open world, but just little missions you could do together. And it felt like Xenoblade X was reaching just to be a bit bigger than it was, but it couldn't quite do it on the Wii U. You could take your friends and recruit them as AI partners, but you couldn't just do it together. So what I'm thinking about now is not Xenoblade X, but Xenoblade Chronicles Z, or Z, Xenoblade Z if you rather. A sequel to X, where it's open world just like X was, but you can fully play the game with your buddies, form a party, go around with 6 different people, all in one world together, playing the story together, and you finally basically got a Xenoblade MMO on your hands there.
Ooh. You're just speaking my language right now.
I mean, Xenoblade has always had MMO DNA in there, but I think it could finally reach it. And you could probably go even further than what I'm describing. Like maybe it could be like Phantasy Star Online, but with Xenoblade.
Oh, now you're speaking my language. But yeah, I would love to see that. I played a bit of Xenoblade X, but it never really clicked for me. I'm a big character design stickler, and so I didn't love like the aesthetic of the people in the game. Something
weird.
felt really uncanny about them. Yeah,
they do look weird. But I think if X were to come back, it shouldn't be as like a year one Switch title, because that's not impressive. I'd rather it just be a brand new game.
You don't want to launch your platform with a remaster.
No way.
Yeah. What do we think year one looks like for the Switch 2?
So Mario Kart locked in. Third parties, I think, will love this thing, because they can suddenly take all their games from the PlayStation 4 and some PS5 games and just re-release them again. Like, especially Capcom. Capcom's eyeing this thing up and rubbing their hands. Resident Evil 2, 3, 7, Village 4, Street Fighter 6. Like, they're rubbing at that money right there. Elden Ring could get a port. Like, I think you can just basically take everything the Switch has missed over these years and chuck it on Switch 2.
I've been thinking about Monster Hunter Wilds and how we're not getting the next, like, news update about the game until summer, despite this being the 20th anniversary of the series. If Switch 2 has been announced by then, I fully anticipate Wilds to be coming to the platform. If the Switch 2 is as powerful as I hope it is. My dreams for Wilds are cross-play and cross-save across all platforms using Capcom ID. And not having Switch there would just kind of be a bummer. So I'm really hoping that happens.
So for me, and the reason that I brought this up is that I think that Nintendo has been very busy behind the scenes. I think that the recent kind of rebooting of Spirits and Smash Ultimate is a good indicator of that fact. But really, I think that it speaks to, at least in my mind, what I'm envisioning is that backwards compatibility on the Switch will be very similar to backwards compatibility between PS5 and PS4, in that your games will natively run on the Switch. However, you can, should you so choose, publish performance patch updates that bring your game up to, Switch 2 levels of performance. So I think that we're probably seeing, I think these new Spirits, in other words, are a byproduct of the Smash Team Studio. Is it Studio S or 2?
Yeah, Bandai Namco have two Switch studios, don't they? So it's one of those two, yeah.
Yeah, one of those studios, I believe that they've resumed work on Ultimate, and I think that the end goal here is actually an update to Smash Ultimate to bring it up to whatever the standard of the Switch 2 is. And I think we're going to see the same for Breath of the Wild. As John mentioned, a demo was purportedly shown. I think we're going to see the same for Tears of the Kingdom, which, I would argue was probably originally slated for Switch 2, given how it performs at points. But I think a lot of your Nintendo first-party stuff, I think Nintendo is going to introduce a handful of launch titles, 2 or 3, but they're also going to introduce updates for a good swath of their first-party Switch 1 games, saying like, hey, all of these also have new updates that bring, higher resolution, higher frame rate, enhanced performance on the new hardware, and that we're going to see developers, following suit. Capcom, Square, publishing updates to their old legacy Switch 1 games to make them look and run better. Hopefully Monster Hunter Rise is in there for you, Brandon.
The Pokemon 30 FPS update. Here we go, baby.
Honestly, performance updates for Switch games are just as exciting to me as just getting new games in general, because a lot of games on Switch never realize their full potential because they're held back by the hardware. I like imagining what Tears of the Kingdom looks like in 60 frames per second, because I can't have that right now. A performance update for a game like Tears or even Super Mario Odyssey, just having full 1080p without dynamic resolution for things in the background. I don't want to see Joe Schmo on New Donk City in the background running at 7 FPS because he's out in the distance. I want to see games like that reach their full potential for the first time.
Here is a question, talking about performance. I've already made a jab at Pokemon, but here's a more realistic thing. So, Game Freak don't usually work on the next console immediately. When it came to Black and White, that launched like a month before the 3DS launched. When it came to Sun and Moon, especially Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, they launched that after the Switch had launched. But Game Freak didn't expect the Switch to be that big. They weren't expecting it to be the successor to the 3DS. With Switch 2, though, we are kind of due a new Pokemon sometime soon. Maybe this year, maybe next year, going by their usual schedules. Will they stick to the Switch, or will they bring this thing to Switch 2 without waiting another year between the systems?
My suspicion for this is that the next Pokemon game is a Nintendo Switch title that runs better on the Switch 2.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think that Nintendo likely already at this point has issued some type of internal mandate saying, all internal projects will have to support Switch 1 for the next probably realistically 2 to 3 years. But they will also require performance upgrades for the Switch 2. I talked about this at length in The Win, which is coming to YouTube soon. But I think that realistically what we're going to see is just basically they're going to kind of design games with the Switch 1 in mind. Very similarly, like I like to use God of War Valhalla or God of War Ragnarok as an example. There was no need to have like the loading corridors in that game, but they're still there because the PS4 was supported for it. If they had just done straight PS5, they could have had Kratos walk through a door and instantly materialize wherever he was or wherever he was going. As we can see with Spider-Man 2, right? And the crazy fast travel stuff they did there. So I think we're going to see games that have all the hallmarks of Switch 1 design, but look and run better. And then maybe 2 years into the Switch 2's life cycle, we're going to see games that really are fully just designed for the Switch 2 that no longer have to worry about supporting the Switch 1.
When it does come to Pokemon specifically, I don't think Pokemon's issues have ever been hardware. I think that their internal development tools are just so outdated. The Switch is capable of so much more than what Scarlet and Violet output. So I do wonder how much it would benefit from just throwing more hardware at it. I'm sure it would benefit somewhat, but the problems of Pokemon go beyond, just hardware capability.
I think the best case scenario for Pokemon, Pokemon Day's in a few weeks, so whatever is happening, we're probably going to find out really soon.
Yeah.
I think best case scenario for Pokemon is that nothing happens. Their biggest drawback is that they just have too aggressive of a schedule. I think if you gave the Pokemon Company even if you gave Game Freak an extra year of development time, a lot of those issues would disappear. So
I don't necessarily agree.
Really?
I think more time is always good, and I want to be clear on that, but I do think John is onto something with their development pipeline and their tools, because you're only as capable as the tool set you have. And I think that because of the wild success of Pokemon, Game Freak has enjoyed being somewhat insular in kind of the pantheon of Nintendo studios, and that they're left to do whatever. But I think they created the same type of game for so long that they don't necessarily have the requisite tool or skill set to make the new types of games that they want to make as well optimized as they should. I do think that there's an issue of time there, but I think it would behoove Game Freak to do what Nintendo did and seek out advice from another developer like Monolith, who is kind of more well-versed in the type of game they want to make, to give them advice on how to better optimize for whatever hardware this is going to land on. But I do agree with you in that the best thing that can happen at Pokemon Day is nothing. Just don't announce a new game, or if you do announce a new game, don't have a release date for it. Let it be a 2025 game. I'm okay with that, because I do love what they did with Scarlet and Violet. They were some of my most engaging Pokemon games in a long time. I was almost going to say favorite, but I do have to weigh the performance issues with them. But I will say that I played them way more than I have anything from Pokemon in years, and I loved them for that. But I do think I would love it if Nintendo just said, hey, you guys need some help building open world stuff. Here's the guys who helped us make Zelda open world. Let them help you optimize your game so that it runs better. Because as much crap as we have given Breath of the Wild and I've given Tears of the Kingdom just recently in this video, those are still pretty darn well optimized games considering what they're doing.
Just to start to wrap things up, I have a few more third-party predictions. Persona 3 Reload, I think, is pretty much a lock, whether it's the existing version or whatever the expanded version's going to be. Baldur's Gate 3, I think, is also pretty much a lock. It's exploring more platforms like Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S. It runs on Steam Deck. Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 are on the Switch, as it is already. So I think that's pretty much a lock as well. But one thing I think is interesting is there are rumors of Xbox stuff going multi-platform. Hi-Fi Rush has been mentioned. I think specifically for PS5. I don't know if the Switch version is locked in or not. But with multi-platform stuff with Xbox, suddenly there's the prospect of a portable Halo 3. And that is very interesting to me. Master Chief Collection on the go. Hand someone the knife Joy-Con that they fold out. You're playing Halo 3 together on a train. That's the dream.
I'm just flabbergasted. I'm still, like, processing that. I would play Halo 3 again if it came to the Switch.
Yeah, I love Halo 3. I would love to have that, and I like the idea of a more full-featured Joy-Con in the context of what you just painted for us. Because I think a lot about single Joy-Con play, and it definitely feels inferior. But I only ever do it when it's like a very simple game. But I could imagine people being like, hey, let's play some Halo and snapping off their Joy-Con to play. But you would absolutely need a much more full-featured Joy-Con to do that. Gosh, that's really interesting. I want to go back and make one more prediction.
Sure.
Give me a proper motion control. Like, I want to bring back the days of playing games like Metroid and Halo with pointer controls.
Oh, you're speaking my language
now.
now.
Way to do that.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Give us a sensor bar.
I need that. Back. Yeah. The substitution that they pulled with the current iteration of Joy-Con just isn't good enough. I need that is the best way to play console shooters. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Switch Gyro is actually like a little bit behind Wii U Gyro. Like, Switch Gyro can be good, but it's not quite as good as what Wii U had. But even that, like, Gyro drifts. It doesn't stay in the same place that you expect it to go. You need a sensor bar, or you need, like, radical advancements in gyro technology. But if they sold me a sensor bar, I'd put that thing on my TV so quickly to play all games.
When you think about it, though, they could build a sensor bar into the dock and just have that. Like, if you put two little IR dots on the outside of the dock and you're set. You just tell people, put it near where you're going to point. And then you could build, just like they did with the gamepad, you could put two little IR dots on the bezel of the Switch and you're done. You've got a full feature set there.
Yeah.
They're going to sell you Nintendo branded candles and you're going to light those candles and boom, sensor bar, baby.
There we go.
I have one more first-party prediction. It won't happen, but I think it'll be fun. In Spider-Man 2, in the flashback section at the school, there were some balloons that had good ray tracing on. Do you guys remember these balloons in that section?
Yes.
I do remember them.
I remember you mentioned them in a video here on the channel.
Yeah, they're very impressive balloons. And I've been playing Balloon Kid for a video recently, which is the Balloon Fight sequel for the Game Boy. What I'm saying now is they should reuse that balloon ray tracing technology for a Balloon Fight sequel, and it would sell billions.
Balloonian dollars.
I want to see Balloon Fight come back, though. There was a Wii U Nintendo Land Balloon Fight game that was pretty cool. But I think that's all we've had since the Game Boy, right?
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna. I don't know that this is a prediction so much as just a hope. I want to see. I think NSO will expand. I think that's a very safe prediction. I think we'll get more consoles added to NSO. I want NSO to include modern remakes, like not fancy, not like Final Fantasy VII remake, but like with modern visual techniques, modern remakes of really old games. So give me the NSO NES collection. But give me the option to play them with like modern 3D visuals or just modern versions of their visuals. So, like you said, Balloon Fight. Give me like a ray traced Balloon Fight. Give me Mario Brothers with modern visuals that maybe represent like the original art direction for the game. Stuff like that.
Zelda 2, please make that game better than it is. It deserves it.
Well, recently the Prince of Persia Lost Crown team said they wanted to do a Zelda 2-esque game with Nintendo.
Yes, please.
Just do Zelda 2, please.
But the Switch 2 could be anything. Everything we've said could happen, or none of it could happen, apart from Mario Kart and 3D Mario, which will happen. But the form it will take is unpredictably exciting, because there is bound to be a gimmick that just no one is going to guess, because it hasn't been done before. And that's always what's interesting about Nintendo products. But we are probably very close to this. Brandon, when do you think this thing's going to be announced?
If it's coming out this year, like we all assume, I have to imagine it's announced in the first 6 months of the year. I don't think they're going to... Declarative. I don't think they're going to allow it to kind of coast for too long. Like, it's going to be like the Switch originally, where it's announced and a few months later the thing's out. I don't think there's any reason to let it stew, because that's just going to make Brandon, hype, and you can't do that in high amounts.
I shouted March at you because Princess Peach Showtime is March, and that's the last full release that we have. Everything after that is just a remaster. So I think you can stop hyping up the Switch at that point.
I mean, that's true. I think March, April makes a lot of sense. If you did 3 to 6 months, that would put you either in the summer or the early fall, because this thing's not coming out in the winter. That doesn't make any sales sense to me. If it's not out by fall, you missed the holiday season. And they definitely want to hit that.
Yeah, I'm with John on this one. I'm on record on our Week in Nintendo podcast that I think March is when they're going to announce it. I didn't base that on Princess Peach. I actually based that on Nintendo's fiscal year turnover. So I think when this fiscal year ends, they will shortly after the turn of the fiscal year announce the Switch 2. And I think we'll get it. I think it's going to be a little different this time. I think that we're getting the announcement of the Switch 2 with just a basic reveal of the concept behind it. Is it an upgraded hybrid? Whatever, what is the gimmick behind this? I think we'll learn that, and I think we'll learn a little bit about titles. But I don't think we're getting the console release until November. I think that because they're missing this March timeframe, they're going to go back to their more traditional November launch window for the console.
I think that we won't get a direct for this. With hardware reveals, they typically just put trailers out there, with social posts. With the Switch original reveal, it was just a YouTube trailer. With the Switch Lite and OLED, they're just YouTube trailers. I can't expect the same thing again. Just a trailer that's maybe 3-4 minutes long, shows the concept, shows how it's a part of your life, and then just shows a few games in that trailer. That's kind of what I'm expecting for the reveal.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I think we get a trailer in March that just shows you stuff. I think in summer, June, traditional E3 timeframe, we get first hands-on from media.
Yeah.
And then we get the launch close to that holiday buying time where they're just positioning a new shiny piece of hardware out there for people during a gift-giving season.
But with all that said, I think that is our Switch 2 predictions for now. These are bound to change as the year goes on. As we know more, we'll probably predict more. But there's bound to be endless stuff to talk about with the Switch 2. So look forward to all of that. And if you enjoyed this, let us know down below in the comments. Click the like button. Maybe even subscribe. That would be lovely. And we also have a Patreon. On patreon.com/GVGaming, you can see early videos we make and also contribute to the GVG cast and far, far more. My camera's going to turn off again. Oh, no. Well, I'll leave that in. So thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.